My brothers and Tess, happy Saturday. Good morning. Hope you're doing great. I hope you're doing great. Want to know how much I hope you're doing great? This much. Hope you guys are great. Hope you had a good week. I had a weird week, man. My cat. I don't know if any of you guys have cats. I'm sure some of you have cats. And if you let them outside, my cat went outside. He's a male. He's about 7 years old. He's a very strong boy. And he goes outside pretty frequently. I've got, like a cat window for him that he just kind of comes in and out of. And, he gets into fights with cats. In the last month, he's been getting into fights where he comes home with a few scratches, nothing major. He's totally fine. He's an aggressive dude. He kills fucking 3 mice a week, birds in the summer. And, but this time, last 2 nights ago, my girlfriend and I were here at my place, and we woke up in the morning, and I went downstairs and saw him, and he was on the couch, just kind of a little slumped over, and he looked really weird, and he didn't really respond much to me talking to him. So I went and looked at him, and he's got a gash, this big wound on his chest, kind of under his armpit, and he's got blood all over him. This is my cat, and he's just he just seems a little out of it, and he seems like defeated and upset. And I'm like, fuck, immediately, like I know, like he got bit by something. So I'm trying to look at it, and it hurts him so bad. This wound on my cat, it hurts him so bad that I can't actually see the puncture wound. I don't know if it was a raccoon who bit him, a canine, if they're canine fangs from a dog, if it's another cat, if he got into a fight with a fucking deer. I mean, there's deer in my neighborhood. I really don't know, right? I didn't know. So I had to struggle because he was in pain to get him to a veterinary emergency room where we had to shave him so we could see this wound. It looks like it was a cat that sunk their fucking teeth directly into his chest. Yeah. And it's not a good area to get bit. I think he's going to be fine. We got him taking antibiotics so that he does not develop an infection. I am washing it and alcohol swabbing it, among some other things, but we kind of had to do a little bit of like surgery to see what the hell was wrong. And now he's home and resting and getting better, and he's going to become strong again. And I'm probably going to fucking inject him with some test when, next time he wants to go out, and just put him on TRT. You can put cats on TRT. There is such a thing as cat TRT. I might want to consider that, considering, he was neutered as a young cat. I did not want to do that, but he was spraying all over the house at the time, and it was just a decision that was made, but I would rather have not made it. At least I can give him TRT and get his testosterone back. And if he goes out there and that fucking cat's out there, that bit him, then he's going to want to rip her head off or his head off. And hopefully he does that. So just wanted to keep you guys posted on what was going on with me. I was going to do content yesterday, but I could not because I was at the vet ER and dealing with my injured cat all day. I love him so much, and I hope he gets better. I hope he comes out the other side, strong mentally, not defeated and ready to avenge that fight if he needs to. But I've got to really consider whether or not I want to let him outside for a while. It's going to be a while either way. I had half a mind to go grab just a very, very powerful pellet gun and sit out there until 4 a.m. and see what animal comes up, whether a cat or a raccoon, and just fucking kill it. That's what I wanted to do. All right. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about erection quality that hurts. Listen, I am reminded frequently by my own body that of what people should be shooting for regarding TRT and how, they feel and how they function. And, one of them is like in the morning when I'm waking up, and I have erections that kind of hurt a little bit. It's somewhat akin to taking ultra doses of PD5 inhibitors or taking something like Trimix. I don't know if you've ever dosed Trimix before, but it's injectable penile vasodilators that just induce erections. And those kind of erections hurt a little bit, right? The erection is so hard and there's so much blood flow going through it that it's somewhat of a, not pain, but it's somewhat of an uncomfortable experience, bordering on pain if it got any worse. And you generally want your nocturnals and your morning erections to be that strong. So however you can work your protocol, and listen, DHT is the driver of that. DHT is the driver of that. But it can't be the sole driver, in the context of an otherwise bad protocol of elevated estradiol past your range, right? So, it's really all about what you should shoot for. I want folks to take from the content that we put out to shoot for the absolute stars. And don't kind of settle for, like Earth's atmosphere. Just you can get there. Read all of our content, get all the courses, comb through the content, the videos. I've explained it all. Or hire me for coaching. Coaching right now is still 50% off. Okay, that is the most significant discount I have ever given on coaching. That code is on the screen in the description, as well as at livecortex.com on the coaching page. You guys know that we recently launched Mastering Testosterone Cream. So those of you on cream that are not dialing in, just get the cream course, you'll dial in. Those of you thinking about getting on cream and want to dial in, get the cream course and dial in. It's targeted toward libido and erections, and I've figured those protocols out, as well as how to adjust them. Let's talk about Primal Libido. Again, another thing that I want folks to shoot for, to always shoot for the outcome of having libido. Most of the time, that is primal. Like that viscerally, you just have a strong drive for sex and a strong drive to mate with your girl, your partner, your whoever. You have to shoot for that. You got to shoot for that. And it's like estrogen is the driver of that, aside from DHT needing to be high. I mean, DHT is the primary driver of that, but estrogen really is, because if you're sitting at 18 or 19, for some folks, that's just going to be a little bit too low estrogen to have the primal libido. Erections will be good in that range, almost definitely, unless you have fibrosis or some other major problem. But libido is dependent, assuming DHT is high enough, on estrogen being, in the libido sweet spot. I mean, it does drive your libido for sure, to a significant enough extent where it can't really be below your threshold, and it should not be above your threshold, after which, erections go south. So, the zone within the zone, again, 27 to 30 picograms per milliliter. I think some folks are going to be fine at 20, but that primal libido really does depend, assuming DHT is where you need it to be. Mid-range, minimally, high, top of the reference range, or slightly super physiologic. The estradiol's got to be in the zone for you to have that primal libido. I've been on protocols where the E2 naturally had just fallen a little bit too low, and I mean, I was a walking erection. That's what's going to happen on lower end estradiol, but the libido just wasn't sufficient. Sex was kind of take it or leave it for me. Whereas when the E2 gets in my libido specific zone, which for me is 27 to 30, which it is for most folks, well, then the libido is off the fucking chains. Off the chains. It's something that you guys always want to, focus on. Trying to think of what else is going on other than Test Cream course, coaching 50%, source list, the new website, a couple new consults. So guys, go check those out. There's a Telegram consult. There's a call with me. And I guess that's it. I've had an interesting week with my cat getting into a fight, which injured him pretty significantly. And now he's got to heal. And then I think I'm going to give him cat TRT so we can go out and avenge his fucking get some redemption on that whatever asshole sunk their teeth directly into my cat's chest. Not good. Brothers. All right, guys, if you got questions, post them. And let's get some chat going. Whatever's happening with your TRT protocol, if you got questions regarding doses, estradiol, DHT, specifically sexual function, drop those questions. Jay Honidas. Hey, brother, 38-year-old guy with thyroid meds. I need them. I've been hypo for the past 7 years. Been on TRT for 4.5 years or so. Interesting. So what was happening when you were hypo? Just out of curiosity. I mean, I know that's a pretty bad place to be. Hypothyroidism can induce prolactin increases. It can induce fucking prolactin tumors. Prolactinomas. These are prolactin secreting tumors that grow in your pituitary. Yeah, thyroid hormones are very important. They can modulate estradiol to an extent. If you're over aromatizing and thyroid hormones are not up to par, it's potentially one of the reasons why. But it's also a major driver of energy. My girlfriend, let's just call her, she's older than me, but fucking stunningly beautiful. I don't know if I have a picture of her and me. Do I? It would have been from like a pretty long time ago. No, I don't. Is it SL? Estradiol. Whoa. I got all kinds of things. Is that it? Oh, that's my old physique. Yeah, I guess it's not here anymore. Her parents had hypothyroidism, and I think her dad ended up with like one of the immune based thyroid disorders, and so she's kind of had a sluggish thyroid her whole life and didn't really do anything. Gets with me, I'm a biohacker, and like she started taking desiccated thyroid, like compounded pharmaceutical grade desiccated thyroid. Fucking changed her life, dude. She was walking around tired all the time and would sleep till 9 o'clock and be like, well, I still don't even feel like I got sleep. And then, started taking the desiccated thyroid stuff and fucking problem solved, man, to a great degree. I started taking it for a while, the actual compounded pharmaceutical grade desiccated thyroid shit. And it was so powerful that eventually I went hyper. I went hyper for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. It took 2 weeks for it to clear and then kind of back to my state. But holy shit, I was heat intolerant. My heart was racing out of my chest. I would just have these intermittent bouts of tachycardia. And so, kind of had to dial back on it, and haven't needed it since. It was this weird thing where it's like, I didn't really need it much to begin with. It's just extra energy. Then it turned me, gave me a brief stint of hyperthyroidism, which was fucking weird. And then thereafter, it's weird. My body has stayed warmer than usual. It's almost like it kind of upgraded, thyroid hormone function for now, at least. So those things are very important. I found daily injections and test SIP made erection quality worse. Well, they can, but it really does have to do with the dose. 3 times a week didn't have any issues. Yeah, because 120 a week total with HCG, 250 IUD every other day, both protocols. So here's a classic case of a person, who does better on more infrequent injections because they're giving themselves a break in aromatization. I'm not against daily injections. People have to understand. I'm just pointing out how subpar they can be because, there's always a reason why I'm saying, hey, you might not want to do daily injections if this is the case, because you never get a trough, right? Even on the fast acting stuff, you get troughs. That's one of the things that makes cream or a cream prop protocol or prop in and of itself such a great set of modalities for TRT, because you trough and you don't get constant exposure to estradiol. Now, on daily injections, the cypionate, if you weren't taking an AI or couldn't tolerate them, your dose that kept estrogen between 25 and 30 or so, then you wouldn't have problems. But that's notoriously harder to do. And it's like it accumulates if you have no trough, even at the same dose here. So what this person is finding is the same dose of 120, but doing it every day. What's that? 16 and a half, 17 milligrams or something a day. Never got a trough, right? So sexual function was not good. Erection quality started to suffer because you never trough. The numbers actually look different. People say test is test and all this other fucking nonsense, complete nonsense. Pharmacokinetics, injection method, injection site, all this stuff matters. It changes the effect of the drug. The duration of action of the drug. It changes all the pharmacokinetic dynamics of the drug. Whereas, you split it up into 3 times a week, it's just different. It's different. You get more of a bolus and then you trough. Your body starts adjusting to that. You get more of a peak and trough, which is how we naturally function. I'm on cream mostly, HCG, and then once a week I inject, once every 5th day I inject 40 milligrams of test cypionate. But 5 pumps, 100 milligram per milliliter cream, 330 IU HCG every single day, regardless, 20 milligrams DHEA. And I, peak in the morning like a man's supposed to. My sexual function is fucking radical all goddamn day. It's still good at night, but there's a peak in sexual function that happens for me in the morning after the application of everything. So I stay streamlined, erections all night, erections in the morning, but I'm troughing in the morning. All right, I'm troughing on everything. So it's once I reapply the cream, I just get this fucking super surge. I'm a horny animal, and some people need to do that, particularly because you don't want to be consistently aromatizing. Dude, cat let the E2 run wild. I'm going to inject him with test, and my cat is going to avenge this fight. For those of you that just jumped in here, my cat got into a fight and was pretty fucking injured, man. He's got a big puncture wound on his chest from likely a feline who sunk their teeth directly into his chest. He's been in fight for the last month and a half or 2, and looks like he's won. Minor scratches, but this one, some cat got the better of him, and I'm fucking pissed. So I'm going to honestly seriously consider giving him TRT. I mean, this is a cat who has his claws, but was, neutered at a young age. And what if the cat that's out there is a stray that is intact? That cat has the fucking advantage, really seriously injure my cat. So we'll see how that works out. Joe, do you think 250 IU HCG every day is typically enough? On top of 2 clicks, 200 milligram per milliliter in the AM. I do. I think you should. I mean, the best way to inject HCG would be every day, first and foremost. It just matches with the half-life of it. You get, you get more of a, you get less fluctuations in what ultimately ends up being estradiol. So, I mean, if you find the dose of HCG and test that keeps you in the zone sexually, it's better if you can find that dose to keep it as close to that zone as possible throughout. It's better to do that. However, I think this is okay. This is one of the only circumstances here where the 200 milligram per milliliter cream can work. It can work with 3 pumps in the AM. Some people make it work with 2 and 2, but I find people's test is too high, and therefore their estradiol is too high on that almost all the time. But with the 200 milligram per milliliter stuff, 2 clicks is a good dose. I think if you find that you're lower end estradiol, within range, you could use HCG to just buffer that and kind of bring the E2 up to 27 or 30, and then you got the libido and the erections, and you have enough DHT. I mean, listen, if you're on this and you feel good, then great. But if you don't, you've got to figure out which direction you need to go in, whether more estradiol or less estradiol. If you're an average aromatizer, you're not going to make a whole lot of E2 on that. Test to be at 700 or so, might peak a little higher. You'll get the peaks though and feel that energy, which is what's so fucking awesome about cream. Shelf life of the vials, it's really difficult to say. I have vials from 2 years ago that are still good, of stuff. So I think for best practice, you want to kind of use it within the first 6 months. Regarding Masteron, I don't know, but I would wager the same thing. I mean, if you talk to any of the folks that are pretty experienced in the use of anabolic steroids, they'll be like, hey, I had some Masteron from 2 years ago, still works fucking great, just something to think about. Matthew found something odd with HCG. If I run a low dose of TRT at 105 a week, 100 IU daily HCG, despite E2 being in range, I feel off. At 250 of test a week with an AI, HCG is no problem. I mean, it could just, E2 at the tissues is different than it is in the blood. And so that could be what you're noticing here. Let me think about this. 250 tests with an AI and HCG, you have no problem. I feel off. It's entirely possible you just need more androgens, you just need more tests. That's it. And the only way you're able to get away with that is to use an AI. If that's you, great. I used AIs for the longest time and I can dial them both in, but it's cumbersome. It's for each dose you land at with tests, you have to dial in the AI, and that takes time. It takes multiple iterations. It takes truly understanding the half-life through bloods, not just the documented half-life. Your body isn't going to adhere necessarily to what the studies say. And it's a process, but I would love to inject 300 a test a week, once a week, and take an AI on day 2 and some HCG on day 2 and let it fucking rip. My body just doesn't particularly love that. I can dial that in, but I'm going to fucking have a lot of acne. And sexual function won't be consistent throughout the week. As consistent, as it is, and other protocols I've been on, and the current one that I'm on. Cool Turbog. Before TRT, you used to be able to last hours in bed. When I'm on TRT, it goes to 5 minutes. go off, goes back to hours. Any idea what causes that? Well, yeah, if you're on TRT, you're making more DHT than normal. DHT is the driver of like the sensation via penile sensory nerve endings, the optimizing of the lining of the blood vessels in the penis, optimizes endothelial nitric oxide synthase so that you can actually convert your arginine into nitric oxide in the male organ. DHT drives the sensation part of it. Estradiol too, though, drives it in that you're going to start to lose sensation the lower you go on E2 below your threshold, right? And when you bring that E2 back up, the sensation is going to be back up. But if E2 goes too high, then sensation goes down again. So it's this dance where you've got to have it pretty, I do not think the TRT protocols have to be fucking surgically dialed in. Man, this is what I do for a living, man. Okay, I've already proven that that's just how it is. But I think that's probably a big part of it here, man. I don't know also where your numbers are when you're on TRT. So, it's entirely possible the estrogen is, just not where you need it to be, or it's like fucking picture perfect and you just, you last 5 minutes or so. I would look at their thyroid hormones at the same time because maybe testosterone is modifying them. The more close to hyperthyroidism you get, the more sensation you have, and the more you're pushing premature ejaculation. I know when I went hyper for a week and a half, 2 weeks on desiccated thyroid, the compounded pharmaceutical grade potent shit, I was climaxing pretty quickly. Look at prolactin. That might be a driver. It's entirely possible that testosterone, the DHT, because it does that, is lowering the prolactin a little bit and making you have a shorter refractory period, and then this would happen. Jordan Jean, thanks for the super chat, brother. Ever have acid reflux with 5? Not with 5 of tadalafil. No. 20, yes. Any risk if I push Proviron from 12 to 25 every day? I don't have hair loss. No major risk. No. Oh yeah, it's fucking totally great. It's the best drug in the world. I would take Proviron every day if it didn't nuke my hair, but it does. I just love that stuff and love how I feel on it. I feel super, super fucking manly. My voice literally changes when I use that stuff. I haven't used it in a while, and so, it's one of those things. I'm so dialed in at the moment. There's no need for me to take it, and it would probably just kind of mess the protocol up because estrogen's like right where I need it to be. But no, I don't really see a risk in that. No, just any change you make to a TRT protocol could modify sexual function. So keep that in mind. Probably going to help you as long as estrogen's not, super low. So no, I don't think that that's a huge problem. I would love to be able to dose 25 milligrams of Proviron every day. I would dose fucking 75 if I could, but it overstimulates me at that point. It does have an AI-like effect at that point. And, it kind of reaches the point of diminishing returns, but it's fucking amazing for my physique. Amazing for the physique. But the hair, whoosh, right off my head, bro. Right off my head. I'd say keep testing it, Yeah, you're going to have the acne with that. You're going to have the acne. It's just that extra DHT is causing the sebaceous glands to kind of start freaking out, and you'll have some acne. But hey, man, it's a trade-off, dude. Thanks for the super chat. Been a while since I did bloods, but historically, we're always very healthy from leanness and diet being really solid. Okay, awesome. Very cool. Clay Bisbee, how do you know if anastrozole is working? E2 is 100 plus. So I've been taking what looks like 0.25 milligrams. I don't feel differently, but kind of sore and achy. Yeah, well, then it's working, and you're probably an over-responder, or you shouldn't take AIs, because if they cause joint pain, means they're unevenly distributing estrogen at the tissues, in your joint tissue specifically. And it's like your serum could say 45, but you're being starved on your neck tendons. There was a point at which I was taking too much AI and I started getting this horrible neck pain. It's just what happens, man. You probably got to back off of it and figure your TRT protocol out another way. E2 being at 100 is fucking substantially problematic, man. That indicates you're either on a cycle level of test or sports TRT level of test, or you are over aromatizing. So you've got to figure that out. If you had any hair loss drugs in your history, that would be one cause of over aromatizing. That's one of the biggest causes of it. Body fat percentage is the other. Hypothyroidism would be another. Shitty lifestyle with a lot of weed and booze would be another. All that stuff combined in your up shit's creek. Brand himself, thanks for the super chat, brother. SHBG is at 0.2. What? 2? You mean? What can I do to get that up? Should I get on HCG or Proviron? Your SHBG is at 2. That's low. That's low. Are you suffering from any kind of sexual dysfunction from this? I'd say if you're not, monitor it for sure, because that's a little troublesome, but I wouldn't be immediately jumping to needing to do something about it. No. Yeah, quite honestly, the only way to resolve that, I've seen people go on weird protocols where they get off of TRT and take estrogen. Estrogen will increase your SHBG. I don't think that that's a good idea, though. I think you got to find another way to go about that. That's a difficult one. There's a guy that talks to Ryan Root and his people. He's somewhat of a bodybuilder, and he's done podcasts with them that talks about a protocol to raise SHBG. So go to Hormones for Me. It's a YouTube channel, and find that video about SHBG and they can point you in the right direction much more than I can at this point. Cream is where it's at. Hell yeah. Steven, you recently did a video on using cream as a base and dosing prop twice a week on every third day, but you didn't talk through 10 milligrams daily. Why is that? At 10 milligrams daily, you're pushing an extra 70 milligrams of test a week is why. Yeah. If you're doing a hybrid protocol of cream and prop or cream and cypionate, you generally don't want to push any more than 50 milligrams of the injectable because you're just going to over-aromatize. The whole purpose of this is you have your cream and HCG get you with E2 at about 20, and then you infuse cypionate or prop. Prop is probably better ultimately for this, to take the estradiol up a little, give you more DHT, give you a little more anabolism, and just keep you straight in that zone of sexual function. The fast-acting stuff has a different effect to androgen receptors just because of how much how quickly it peaks, and therefore how much bolus at a time you're getting. If you get a slow drip of DHT, well, say you're on cream, you get a good bit of DHT, but then you dose prop, it's an even quicker, more concentrated bolus of AR receptor, androgen receptor activation. And so like it just ends up being extremely fucking useful for sexual function and just giving an increase in energy. I mean, I love stuff like this. Some people have a hard time dialing in steady state on anything, but you get them to where E2 is at 20, and then you throw in just like a small peak and trough, right? Peak and trough of prop, peak and trough of cypionate if it's done every fourth or fifth day, prop every 3.5 days or so. And that just dials them in. Because again, we're not designed for steady state. We're not. We're just not. We need, even if it's a small degree, guys, of fluctuating hormones where estradiol gets to go down and, you're not constantly exposed to aromatizable androgen. This is where you're going to find the best sexual function. 10 milligrams a day, you're pushing 70 milligrams a week, and you're probably going to defeat the purpose by over-aromatizing. What's up, brother? Zach here, cream landed today. Holding off. I don't want to be an idea guy. Love that. Only issue is E2, everything else in range, so reducing HCG and waiting. Yeah, I would probably reduce the test dose instead and not the HCG. I mean, if you're running 400 IU a day, then maybe reduce the HCG dose, but otherwise, I think you should reduce your test dose. And I assume you're on cypionate or anathate or something. At that point, I mean, I'd reduce your test dose, keep the HCG the same, run labs until you get E2 at 20, and then add a pump of cream on top of that, and tell me that you're not a horny, son of a gun with great erections if you can dial that in. Steve, wonderful. Sorry I wasn't clear. Once the vial has pierced, what's the shelf life roughly? Same. I mean, again, I really just don't. Nobody really knows, and I don't think that makes all that much of a difference. Lazarus dropped TRT to 150 a week after being at 200 for 6 months. Energy dropped through the floor, and he promised staying on higher dose if I feel better. You're going to regulate. What happens when you reduce the dose like this is your body is in a temporary androgen deficient state because you got all these upregulated androgen receptors that are used to a certain amount of binding, from androgens, from tests and DHT. Then when you reduce the total amount of net androgen coming into the body, you have receptors not being bound to, and your body sort of thinks for a temporary period that you're in an androgen deficient state. This is what we all think anyway. I mean, I don't think there's any way to prove that, but this is what people think. And I think it's a plausible theory. but we do see this in practice. Those of us that work with people on a client basis, we see that this kind of thing happens, and it always regulates, always will regulate, unless the dose is entirely too low for you, and 150 is not too low. Yeah. If I were you, I would do nothing. I would let it sit and let it regulate. At the same time, how much are you injecting, or how frequently are you injecting? If you go from 200 to 150 and you're injecting once a week, well, yeah, that 150 might ultimately end up clearing your system too substantially or too much by day 4 or 5, and you're going to feel like dog shit. You can never kind of get up on it, But no, in no world does 1 on 150, feel bad. Energy completely dropping forever. It's temporary. Crypto Magic, hey bro. 45 milligrams testy 3x a week. So 90, was it the 130 something? Yeah, 135. I noticed more acne after switching from 60 milligrams twice weekly. Acne due to body having to adjust DHT read to no DHT reading, but serum to 134. I believe that's in range, correct, over there for picomolars per liter. I think that's in range. I think the top of the range is 150, 160, 180 maybe. So I think you should be fine. I think it's more so the change. The change is one of the things that can cause that. If you felt better sexual function wise on the other regimen, just go back to that. I would go back to that. If you can make long esters work in a way which allows you to infrequently inject, do it. It's a lot easier. I have people, as I've said, I've made all these points in the past that like there are just some guys that need to inject a lot less frequently, and their body deals with the test the way it's kind of supposed to. And they have a nice peak and they have a nice trough, but it's just they're consistently good with libido and erections on the infrequent stuff. Whereas they go more frequently, they can start getting fucking problems. You need to determine how you respond to test. Throughout protocol suggestions and trying different protocols, you have to identify your profile. This is a whole video I should do. What is your profile? Are you somebody that needs to be on 200 plus with an AI and testicular support with HCG? Because you can tolerate the AI. You need super physiologic levels of androgens. Your body fucking loves it. Your H&H doesn't go too high. Your sexual function's out of this world. But you're controlling the estrogen with an aromatase inhibitor, and you don't have joint pain, and you don't have a loss of libido from it, and you don't have any weird fucking symptoms. Perfect. That's your profile. Alternatively, you could be somebody who does not respond well to aromatase inhibitors, no matter if you microdose them, like doing Liquidex, where you chop up Arimidex and put it in vodka, and you're dosing small little drops at a time to get 0.01 milligrams or some shit like that. And you still have joint pain. Believe it or not, that's some people. So those people there that can't tolerate AIs and DHT derivatives are going to have to go on a lower end test dose, fill the anabolism up if they need to with Anavar, or just settle with the anabolism down at 100 milligrams a week, or a lower end or medium dose of cream, and just kind of go from there. But everybody has to know what profile they are for TRT. I think I can make everything work, but I really got tired of convoluted protocols after I ran the cycle last summer, running AIs throughout, sports TRT, running AIs throughout, most of the time on TRT, running AIs and DHT derivatives to keep estrogen in check. Otherwise, my sexual function would just disappear from my fucking body. It's like I can do both, but my body much more prefers being right on the borderline where I'm anabolic as fuck. I mean, I feel great. I go to the gym and crush it. I have energy all goddamn day, but it's like on the lower end-ish stuff, you're probably better with fast acting testosterone, because even if it's a low enough dose to keep estrogen in range, which is what you want, you peak, and you peak quickly, and you get that dopamine conversion via tyrosine hydroxylase, get energy that's noticeable. You get a peak in androgens, and it feels fucking awesome. Feels awesome. Megatron Nemo, after being dialed in on a good PFS protocol for several months, what's the healing that occurs in the body will eventually become less estrogen sensitive? I rarely see, I don't think I've ever seen a person that has PFS become less estrogen sensitive, because I don't often see people without PFS become less estrogen sensitive. We as men are not meant to have super elevated estradiol. We're not. I mean, if you want to transition to a female, you know what they give them, right? Estrogen. It's pretty cut and dry. We're not supposed to have high levels of it. So I don't think that your response to estradiol is going to change all that much. You just have to contend with the idea that you're going to have lower levels or levels in your zone. And that's most people on TRT that don't have sexual dysfunction induced by finasteride or dutasteride or other drugs. Like high dose curcumin, by the way, is doing that to people. So regarding the rest of the healing, though, as long as a good protocol is paired with PD5 inhibition, penis pumping, if you want to go that extra step, you're going to reoxygenate the tissues of the penis, upregulate the synthesis of arginine into nitric oxide via endothelial nitric oxide synthase, increasing in quantity via direct contribution from DHT. And you'll have a penile rehabilitation. That's really like dick rehab happens in these cases with enough androgens. And, usually with the help of PD5 inhibitors. I mean, there's all kinds of studies on PD5 inhibitors. Like over time, taking them, they optimize the function of your penis, man, just via the extra blood flow. Blood is the absolute life supply of all of us, period, our hearts and whatever, every organ in our body. Well, those are kind of things you can look at happening, man. What's a good second compound for muscle mass that also has a byproduct of increasing sex drive and confidence? Well, again, nothing, because it's all in context, man. I mean, you can take Masteron if your estrogen's at 78 and it takes it down at the tissue level, maybe moves the serum 20 points, 15 points, 10 points, and then you get sex drive back and erections back specifically, but you're also more anabolic because you're taking Masteron. At the same time, you could take Masteron at the same dose of test and the same level of estradiol, like pretty up there, and it just because you don't respond to things that inhibit or block or estrogen receptors or aromatase, you get libido problems. You're anabolic as fuck, but you get libido problems and erection problems. That happens too. So it's all about finding your profile of what you are, as I just described. Honestly, the best thing to build muscle mass, keepable gains that will not fuck with sexual function, because rarely are you going to find something that does both, optimizes sexual function, unless just by accident it takes your E2 where you need it to be. Primo and Masteron are both capable of doing that. It would be Anavar. It would just be oxandrolone. Yeah. I mean it's bind to SHBG lowered a little bit. That'll be inconsequential to sexual function. It's not going to increase your free to a substantial amount like people theorize and never prove it. It's just going to make you fucking strong as hell. And with a lot of reduction in catabolism and a lot of increase in anabolism, which is primarily what it does. That'd be my take on that. Ghost Fusion. Hey Ryan, what's up? Have you experimented with vitamin K2 mega doses? No, I think it's a bad idea. I think you're pushing agitating your kidney if you do that. Yeah, I would not do that. My friend mentioned it because his estrogen levels, it causes estrogen levels to plummet to 0. And he hasn't been on anything else exogenous. Weird. I wonder why. I mean, it just could be optimizing the way he's clearing the estradiol. Sorry, I have like some sort of like nasal pathway congestion at the moment. There's been some virus back and forth between my girl, me, her son, probably fucking everybody else in the book. Why am I joint starting TRT plus Proviron when E2 is 32? Just because at the tissue level it's inhibiting aromatase. That's probably why. And I would wager it's a higher dose of Proviron. That's the kind of stuff that happens on Proviron sometimes. Because it can act like an aromatase inhibitor. I mean, it does. I mean, the studies show us like it does inhibit the enzyme that turns androgens into estradiol. It's just not to a significant extent at 12 to 25 milligrams a day. You start pushing 50 to 75, and that's when it really starts acting like an AI. Zach here, would you advise dropping the test dose for guys who need TRT because of high SHBG? In their case, they need high doses, right? It's not that SHBG determines how you should dose or what frequency you should dose. I think that's a myth. I think you can make anything work, whether high or low SHBG, but you're probably going to want to dose something like Proviron so that you can lower the amounts of sex hormone binding globulin if you can tolerate what might be potential hair loss from it. Yeah, that's what I think you should do. Yeah, DHT itself would also do that. Comes with caveats, so keep that in mind. Jordan thinks that oils like test esters last a long time. Of course, peptides don't last super long after made into a solution with backwater. Oh, they do. They absolutely do. Test does. It just fucking does. I mean, I got coaching clients will come to me and, they'd like to stay on the long ester, and we think it's a good idea, but they're coming from 50 milligrams every other day or something like that, and their E2 is super high. we get them down at a reasonable dose because they can't tolerate AIs. Otherwise, we would just use an AI. And like 3 weeks goes by, the E2 is still substantially over range, and they're like, oh, I want to change. Maybe I should add some cream. And I'm like, no. This is a process. You need to do nothing. You need to wait, because long esters take a fucking long time. Go on cream. Cream alone with HCG, cream plus prop, or cream plus a little bit of cypionate, disproportionately cream, if you don't want to wait so long. But otherwise, like Jordan is saying here, it fucking takes forever. 6 to 8 weeks, boys. And that's really true. Why do my joints are on TRT and Primal? Okay, I explained this. Matthew, Aromacin has been much smoother ride than 8X. Yeah, it is for a lot of people, Matthew. Definitely can't dose them on a schedule. This is also an important point. It's just because you haven't quite identified, if you will, the pharmacokinetic profile of it. Specifically, like at day 5, is estrogen rebounding? How much? And at what point after you dose one singular dose of Aromacin, call it 6.25 milligrams, at what point in the next 2 weeks, 14 days, does estradiol reach the exact number or around the number it was before you took it? Because that's the point at which you would redose, not before. You dose it before, people start thinking, I'm going to dose it on a schedule, and you get side effects. Thank God you don't have side effects. That's fucking beautiful. Arimidex is it's just so quick. It's just too quick. And unless you're dosing prop, which is also really quick, it's just going to disproportionately skew the numbers and skew the distribution of estrogen at the tissues, is what I think. Yeah, Aromacin is superior in a lot of ways compared to Arimidex. It just is. I mean, I never really got joint pain unless it was too much Aromacin on that stuff, But I just, when I was on sports TRT and on the cycle, it just worked. Was sexual function perfect? No, it was not perfect, but it was totally passable. I didn't need Cialis for sex or any of that shit, and libido was okay. Yeah, I think it's the best thing we have for people that want to, take AIs and have high doses of test. Besides DHT itself, Masteron and Primo, but 8X out of the aromatase inhibitors is the best. You're welcome, brother. I can't imagine what my fate would have been if I weren't around regarding PFS. Yeah, man, it's nice to have a problem you're facing, and then someone is out there like talking about that knows a lot about it. Otherwise, you're sort of out there having to succumb to the limited and mostly incorrect information that's on the forums with people with a really super negative attitude. I mean, the PSSD folks are the worst with, like, anyone that's trying to help or thinks they have a way to solve it. They call you a scammer. Been called a fuck. I mean, I'm fixing guys' sexual function. I'm seeing their results. I'm watching their blood change. I'm reading my libido and erections are back. And yet, people are calling me a fucking scammer. It's just, the forums are filled with negativity. And if it wasn't for folks like me and folks like Alex Kickle and even Ryan Russo, although I don't agree with his approach on it, I think other things caused it. And I mean, you guys would strictly have the forums, which sucks. So you're welcome, dude. I will continue talking about it. I'm going to be doing some PFS content up and coming. Medical community isn't doing anything about this drug ruining millions of lives. Yeah, they won't. I mean, Merck can get sued and lose from this class action lawsuit that happened. And it's just, people act like it didn't happen. I've never been the type to look at the sky and be like, everyone's going, hey, it's green, and I'm like, well, it's obviously fucking blue, and just submit and go, well, I guess you're right, it's green. I guess I'll just, it's super clear the shit causes major problems in people. Thoughts on Sustanon? I think it's okay. You got to apply the same principle of dialing in with anything, of getting DHT in the zone, getting estradiol in the zone, and having functional testicles. Not joshing around. Love that, man. You touched on this before briefly, but wanted to see your opinion on what was the other influence claiming that the using an AI is bad and that estrogen isn't something to worry about. Well, I have not only touched on it, I have gone into extensive detail about this. They are half right in that aromatase inhibitors can pose major problems. They can cause you to have degeneration of joint, fluid. They can cause you physical fucking pain because your joints are lacking in estrogen kind of at the tissue level. The jury's still out and we don't really know, but they can potentially be not great for your heart if they are overdosed. And, if they're overdosed, you're going to be almost definitely losing bone mineral density over time. So that's all true. The fact that the notion that estrogen isn't anything to worry about, it's like it ignores very, very basic science, particularly in the distinctions between men and women regarding sex hormones and what drives particular behaviors, not the least of which is sexual function. Again, when a man is transitioning to be a woman, they starve that person of dihydrotestosterone and testosterone, and they give them estradiol. Estradiol, in the absence of androgens, even in the presence of androgens, can feminize you. That's what it does. I mean, I've had guys, listen, man, I've had guys come to me on, TRT doses where estrogen's super high. They're being told by some of these YouTubers, influencers, that estrogen doesn't need to be managed. And they're telling me that their whole life they have been heterosexual. And now with their 89 estradiol, they're starting to have homosexual thoughts. Yeah, the estrogen's fucking feminizing them, dude. That's just it. I've seen the other side of it, like where, folks are taking finasteride or other drugs like that. They've reduced their conversion to DHT and increased their conversion to estradiol, and they're starting to have gender dysphoria because of that. There are studies on this. The likelihood of erectile dysfunction increases substantially the more you go over 32 picograms per milliliter of estradiol, despite how many androgens you have, how much androgens you have. I've also proven, just through countless fucking men over time, I've been doing this for years, that the idea of a ratio, as long as you have superphysiologic DHT and superphysiologic test, you can have superphysiologic estradiol. Not true. There's a threshold of estradiol regardless of how much androgen you're loading into your body, which via probably estrogen receptor alpha activation is going to cause you to have erectile dysfunction, reduction of penile-based blood flow, and an inhibition of the arcuate nucleus of the brain so that you're not making enough dopamine, otherwise known as prolactin inhibiting hormone, to control prolactin and to fire the hypothalamic regions that are heavily involved in sexual function, specifically libido. Estradiol increases your net quantity of antidiuretic hormone, otherwise known as arginine vasopressin. The more estrogen you have, the higher your antidiuretic hormone is going to go most of the time, which is going to cause you to retain a lot of fluid in your body. Consistent fluid retention increases the pressure of your blood. None of this is fucking good, man. Okay? Women, use estradiol to get their, uterine function fired up. Like they start building the uterine lining, then they shed it. This is what estrogen is for. For males, we just need a little bit of it for it to be in range. Quest has a higher upper range over which you're over an estradiol at 29 picograms per milliliter. What are we just going to discard? We're just going to say Quest range is horseshit? Okay, LabCorp is 42. Still pushing it. But even LabCorp, who's being a little more liberal about it, has a fucking top of the reference range. Forget all the studies. I mean, all this is clear. You give rats estradiol, they form pituitary adenomas. Right? Estradiol via the arcuate nucleus, inhibition of dopamine, among other things, mainly making dopamine D2 receptors less sensitive to the agonism of dopamine, increases prolactin when it's in excess. all that said, my question to those folks, the influencers who say, let estrogen go, is how the motherfuck aren't you acknowledging this literature and all the stuff that's out there? At the same time, I get defectors from these folks that their blood pressure is sky high, their dick doesn't work, their libido is shit, they have no sensation, they can't even fucking come when they have sex. So, I mean, the case is crystal clear for me. Those are my thoughts on it, man. Those are my thoughts on it. Steve Wonderful on cream, 20% hybrid with 10 milligrams prop daily. 4 clicks to cream. Okay. Is 3 clicks AM, 1 click PM better for E2 with prop instead of prop in the AM? 3 clicks in the AM, 1 click in the PM. No, for cream, you generally want to do everything in the AM. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the additional prop. But that's probably because you're on 4 clicks of the 100 milligram per milliliter stuff. I think it's 100. No, that's 20%. Yeah, that's too high. You're going to over aromatize on this. That's your problem is your dosing structure is not good for controlling estrogen here. If I were you, I would have the 200 milligram per milliliter cream at 2 pumps, and I'd have 10 milligrams of prop every third day, and track the estradiol on that. Assuming you also have HCG in your regimen, which you should. Most people cannot go without that, and then dial in from there. Matthew, sorry about your cat. Oh, that's okay, man. Yeah, he'll be all right. Definitely do an update and would be interested to hear about the cat TRT protocol. Yeah, this is really something I'm considering because if there's a motherfucker out there, right, whether it's a raccoon, because it could still potentially be, or another cat, that got the better of him, he's going to want redemption. He's a temperamental cat in that regard. He's very well behaved and is a very sweet, cuddly cat, but he is also very manly. He's going to want to rip that cat's fucking head off. But if that cat happens to be intact and it's a male cat, my cat has a disadvantage because he was neutered when he was younger. I waited 2 years so that I could masculinize him, and then he was spraying all over the house among other things, and I had to ultimately get it done, and I did not want to. I shouldn't have. People go through all this shit. Oh, it's irresponsible to do that because then they're going to be creating more kitties who end up like in dumpsters. And okay, yeah, potentially. So you're just going to castrate the cat instead? So anyway, I'm probably going to inject him with testosterone. Yeah, just the dose that makes sense for cats. You can just take them to the vet and give them TRT. There's cat TRT. So if I know the doses and have done enough studying on it, which I've already begun to do, then I can just administer it myself for him. Then, though, once he heals up, which the test will probably help him heal, and he goes back outside, he's going to fucking kill that cat. And good. Maybe that's good because I don't like seeing him hurt like that. He was in bad shape. I made me cry. I fucking love him. Darren. Been on 200 milligrams per milliliter testosterone cream. So what? A pump in the morning and a pump in the evening for 5 weeks. Plus HCG, 200 IU every other day. Blood's taken 4 hours after the AM dose. Yeah, I mean that is what's going to happen. Estradiol immunoassay, so not sensitive, is 56. That looks about right. Prolactin a little high. No real improvement in libido. Your estrogen's too high. That's the answer. Yeah, you're so correct me if I'm wrong though. That is just 2 pumps of the cream, right? 200 milligram per milliliter. So you're just doing 2 pumps in the morning, or 1 pump in the morning and 1 pump in the evening. If that's the case, the E2 shouldn't be that high, but I mean, you might want to do those 2 pumps in the morning. Again, this whole point of consistently aromatizing is usually not going to be great for you. But I mean, the problem is estradiol, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you have enough HCG, it looks like. You might need a little more, but I think that's fine. But I mean, either way, if you're peaking at 1253 and you're not taking an AI, so you could do this and take an AI and be fine if you can dial in aromatase inhibitors. But peaking at 1253 in total testosterone, the estrogen is going to be over range and you're going to have sexual dysfunction. That's just it. So like when the question was asked before, what are my thoughts on people that say, let estrogen go? Look, I mean, sure, it's an internet anecdotal, but you get into the actual looking at bloods in these folks, and it proves it. Then when you get it down, it proves it that reducing it and while keeping DHT high, they get their erections back. Why do people have such a hard time on hyper aromatizable androgens like testosterone and cypionate, and then they switch to test cream at the right dose? They have more DHT and less estradiol, and then they have erections again. Why? I mean, pretty clear. JB YouTube, Sustain at 250, E2 is 166. Would adding 100 milligrams of Masteron bring it back into range? So that's just slightly over. The top of the range is what, 150? That would be too much Masteron in my opinion. Yeah, I know that people say 1-to-1 and all this shit, but I rarely see people take like 1-to-1 ratio of mass to test and don't have sexual dysfunction. In other words, the Masteron kills their libido because it's just blocking estrogen receptors too strongly. I do not think that is a great idea. Over aromatizing on 25 milligrams prop daily. It's probably because you're responding to the test in a way which is making you go to 1,500 plus or 1,200 even. That's why. I mean, you might be better at 10 or 15 milligrams. I've seen people take 15 milligrams of prop a day and their total test goes above 1,500. So, it just all depends on how you're responding to the drug. I'm not like that. I can take 25 a day of prop is like my don't need an AI, have some HCG in there, perfect sweet spot dose. I mean, I can get away with 22, a little higher HCG, but 30, a little bit too much estradiol, 40, 50, obviously over aromatizing. I was at 500 a week once on prop. E2 went to 90 something. And, that was not great. So you probably are an over responder, and your total T is almost definitely like fucking 1,200, 1,300, 1,500 or something like that. So you need to look at that. You need to look at where it is. Max, do you think one could stop testosterone after being on test prop 60 milligrams every other day for about a year? How long would the recovery take without PCT? Oh, you certainly could, but you're going to feel like dog shit for about a month, and then your natural production will start kicking into gear. I mean, it's going to start kicking into gear the moment you stop. Like a couple days later when you're in the test deficient state, because that's where you're going to go. But then pituitary has to fire up again, and you will feel pretty badly for at least 3 weeks. Yeah. Your body's going to go through all manner of fluctuations. You're going to have a temporary state of like hypoandrogenism. Your voice might lighten and, you might have some changes in your jawline and shit like that. Sexual function is probably going to be awry for a little bit there. You'll be not strong and your energy is going to be pretty shitty. Yeah. This is why people do PCT, just to blunt that effect a little, to buffer it so that you're not just like in catastrophic hypoandrogenism, which is not good. That's not going to be a good idea to do. E2 is going to drop as well, and that's going to cause its own problems, not the least of which is you won't be able to retain any water. You'd be pissing it out, and that's going to dysregulate your serum potassium and sodium, and chloride, and you do not want that. That feels fucking bad. So I think this is a terrible idea. I think you should not do that. I think you shouldn't do it, man. Boys, coaching still 50% off. If you need to book me, go livecortex.com. There's a discount code that takes thousands of dollars off of the total. Okay. I'm going to leave that up there for you folks just to keep in mind. That is going away as soon as I am overbooked. But again, people close, we close their sessions, folks move on, dialed in, and we bring new people in. So frankly, and thankfully, and surprisingly, I haven't become overbooked, but I'm right on the fucking edge. So book if you need to, livecortex.com. We're on the fact-finding call at this point as soon as early this week. And we start. Not one of those coaches that likes to sit and collect information for 2 weeks and we don't start. We start right away because I know you need to start right away. Matthew, side note, I was in Let E2 Run Wild you were on that camp, and Ryan saved my TRT experience. Awesome. For the first year, I had nothing but serious problems listening to their TDE ratio bullshit on Reddit. Yeah, just the ratio. If this was true, we could all tolerate 78 picograms per milliliter estradiol, couldn't we? If the ratio nonsense was true, couldn't we all just mega dose test and be fine? Yes, but it's not true. So we have ED, libido problems, blood pressure problems, all manner of other problems. Again, people that get their estrogen too high listening to this nonsense, they fucking start questioning their sexual orientation. Of course they are. They're being loaded with a female hormone, man, that feminizes the brain. I'll end on that, boys. Mastering Testosterone Cream, go grab it, livecortex.com. Coaching, if you have to book me, it's 50% off. All codes are down in the description of this video. Content coming this week. Now that my cat is not in a super catastrophic position, I'll be able to do content. Couldn't yesterday because of this. He'll get better. I'll keep you guys posted. Love you guys. Rock on, kick ass. I'll see you this week. Bye-bye. Peace.